Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a seriously chilling midnight adventure that suddenly flips into a deadly crime scene. We're looking at Chapter 4 of Mark Twain's classic, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. This is the exact moment the story shifts from innocent childhood games to pure, unadulterated terror, setting the stage for literally everything that follows.
So ask yourself, what would you do if a midnight ghost hunt suddenly turned into a real-life murder scene? Imagine being a kid again. You're sneaking out your bedroom window at night, your heart is pounding out of your chest just thinking about looking for spirits in a dark, creepy graveyard. And then, out of nowhere, you stumble upon something way more terrifying. Something totally real and totally deadly.
All right, let's dive right in. Picture Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, hiding behind the trees, crouched deep in the tall grass of the graveyard. It's the dead of night, midnight, and the wind is just howling through the branches. They're whispering frantically because they hear voices coming their way. At first, they are absolutely terrified. They actually think these approaching figures are spirits coming to claim a recently buried body. You can just imagine the sheer panic on their faces as they peek around the tree trunks into the pitch black.
This brings us to a midnight adventure where superstition meets reality.
There's such a stark contrast here, a massive pivot between what the boys expected and the reality they got. The whole reason they're even in the graveyard is based on pure superstition. I mean, they're carrying around a dead cat. Why? Because local legend says throwing a dead cat at ghosts who come for a body at midnight will magically cure warts. It's just innocent childhood nonsense, right? But then, reality hits hard. Those figures walking toward them? Not ghosts. They are 3 living, breathing men from the village, Muff Potter, Injun Joe, and young Dr. Robinson. And they aren't there to haunt the graveyard. They've brought shovels and a wheelbarrow to literally dig up Hoss Williams' corpse. In an instant, this silly, childish game drops Tom and Huck right into the grim, very serious reality of grave robbery.
Which leads us directly into the graveyard murder itself, and a very deadly disagreement.
The way this escalates is just incredibly fast. It unfolds in 3 chaotic steps. First, the men actually succeed in digging up the body. But then, Dr. Robinson suddenly demands a second body, which absolutely infuriates Muff Potter. They're arguing over some really dark business, and you can practically cut the tension with a knife. Then, step 2, the disagreement violently boils over. A full-on fight breaks out right there in the dirt among the graves. The doctor hits Muff Potter on the head, knocking him out cold. Finally, step 3. In all this chaos, Injun Joe seizes his moment. He snatches up the knife that Muff Potter dropped, and in a terrifying flash of violence, he stabs Dr. Robinson. The doctor falls dead right on top of the unconscious Muff. And just like that, a grave robbery becomes a cold-blooded murder.
Now, we look at the framing of Muff Potter and the anatomy of a truly wicked lie.
What is so incredibly chilling here is how the vibe shifts from explosive violence to this cold, calculating manipulation in seconds. Injun Joe doesn't panic. Not at all. Instead, he meticulously takes that bloody murder weapon and places it right into the hand of the unconscious Muff Potter. Then, he literally just sits there. He waits, completely calm, for Muff to wake up. When Muff finally comes to, he's totally confused, asking what happened. And Injun Joe, without missing a single beat, immediately accuses Muff of the murder. The darkest part of all this? He actually plays the role of a sympathetic friend. He falsely promises the terrified Muff that he won't tell a soul about what Muff supposedly did.
The linchpin of this whole manipulation is exactly what Injun Joe tells him. You two fought. He hit you on the head, then you stabbed him. It's a brilliant but terrible lie. Why? Because it weaves in actual elements of the truth. I mean, the fight did happen, and Muff was hit on the head. Injun Joe perfectly weaponizes Muff Potter's disorientation and lack of memory right against him. He essentially constructs a completely believable yet totally false reality for a man who's just too dazed to know any better.
And sadly, the manipulation works. It works tragically well. Convinced of his own guilt by Injun Joe's calm, lying voice, a completely terrified Muff Potter just leaves his knife behind in the graveyard and runs away into the night. He's totally broken, and he completely falls for the trap. So, let's shift our focus back to our hidden witnesses for this next part. The terrified blood oath, a vow of silence.
Right. Remember Tom and Huck? They've just watched this entire, hugely traumatic event unfold from the shadows, and they have bolted back to the village, literally running for their lives. Just listen to the sheer terror in Huck's words. "No, we can't tell. Injun Joe will kill us." This highlights a massive shift for these boys. Keeping quiet isn't some silly childish game or a prank anymore. It is a desperate, profound trauma response driven by absolute, paralyzing fear. They know for a fact that if Injun Joe can murder a doctor without a second thought, he definitely won't hesitate to silence two kids who saw the whole thing.
And this just perfectly illustrates the absolute gravity of their situation. A simple pinky promise isn't going to cut it here. It's not enough to protect them from this level of danger. So they sit down in the dirt and decide they have to make a blood oath. They literally prick their fingers to use their own blood as ink. It's such a dark, visceral ritual, and it really shows you just how deeply this trauma has affected them.
These are the exact words they write down. Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer will not tell. They write the initials of their names in blood on a little piece of wood, and then they dig a hole in the ground near a tree to bury it. By bearing that oath, they are sealing an unbreakable vow of silence. They're quite literally burying their secret in the earth, just desperately hoping it stays hidden forever.
Which brings us to our final takeaway: the weight of fear and the burden of a heavy secret. Let's pull this all together and look at why this is so crucial for the boys going forward. First off, we see this incredibly abrupt loss of childhood innocence. Their silly little game with a dead cat is completely shattered by an actual real-life murder. Second, we witness the devastating power of cold, calculated deceit, watching Injun Joe smoothly frame an innocent man. Third, there's the paralyzing, life-altering effect of trauma and fear that now grips Tom and Huck. And finally, they're left carrying the immense burden of a deadly secret. Think about it. They started the night afraid of imaginary ghosts, and they ended living in very real terror of a murderer who is walking freely among them.
So I want to leave you with this thought to chew on. When innocent superstition collides head-on with true evil, how long can a terrifying, bloody secret actually stay buried? The boys have sworn their oath, sure, but as the village wakes up to the horrifying news of a graveyard murder, the pressure of that secret is only going to grow. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep this heavy burden in mind because the fallout from this one single midnight adventure, it literally changes everything for Tom and Huck.